Welcome. In this presentation, you'll learn all about land turtles, especially pond turtles, and how to sketch them. So let's get going. Within the reptiles, you've got your snakes, you've got your turtles, and you've got your lizards and things like the chameleons. And then the turtles are in their own order. And so they're super unique because they have this carapace or shell. So it's a protective shell that their backbone is actually attached to, and so are their ribs. And the shell is actually kind of an outgrowthing evolutionarily of the ribs. So it's super, super unique. No other critter has that. And so here's an example of their skeleton. And you can see this is from the bottom here, this image from a museum. And you can see their ribs there with the carapace attached. And you can see their number of toes. They've got 5 toes on the front with 5 claws on the front and back. We don't always see those like in the species we're sketching today, but there are 5 and they all have claws. And they vary with the male or the female. So the male has much longer claws, and they use those to wave around at the female to court her and to touch her. And the female has shorter claws. And also with the tail, the male has a longer tail, like in this image, and the female has a shorter tail. Let's see what else I want to say about that. I think that's it. Okay. Yes, pretty cool. So within the turtles, there's basically 3 different groups, and we're mainly going to talk about one of them today. And I just found out it's actually World Turtle Day on May 23rd. So I'll probably do some kind of a blog post and maybe post this video for that later, but I just realized that. Anyway, there's 3 groups of turtles, and one group are the sea turtles. And they're very different from the other turtles. They're really adapted to the sea. They're kind of flat and very streamlined like this. And then their front legs are adapted into flippers. Kind of like, remember how we illustrated the humpback whale and the sea lion, right? So those guys have the front feet adapted to being in the marine environment like flippers. So, of course, these guys aren't a mammal like sea lions or whales, but they have the same kind of convergent evolution, we would call it. So anyway, sea turtles have that flipper and the real streamlined look. And of course, they spend most of their lives in the sea, except for when they're coming ashore to lay their eggs. And there's only 7 species in that group. So it's the smallest group of turtles. So that's like, this one we have here, which is the largest, is the leatherback turtle. They can get to be 6 feet long. Isn't that crazy? And then there's also green turtles like this one. Maybe if you've ever been snorkeling, like someplace in Hawaii or Mexico, maybe you've seen a green turtle like I've been lucky to see. And in this picture is a really good example of how you can see its front nose is kind of into like a little beak there. Turtles don't have any teeth, but they do have very strong jaws and a beak, which helps them to catch their food. So marine turtles is one of the 3 groups, and there's only 7 of them. Let's see, there's the ones we just showed you there, the leatherback and the green, also the loggerhead, 2 ridleys, and a hawksbill. And a flatback. Yes, Courtney, your friend has a snapping turtle, right? Yes, and Rebecca, the ages vary a lot. So that's what I was going to move on to next is the second of the 3 main types of turtles are tortoises. And that's kind of a common name. You have your turtle, which means basically the whole order. And then tortoise is a word that they usually use for land turtles that live in drier habitat and pretty much never go in the water. And so this is an example of the famous Galapagos turtle. And of course, they're very large and very heavy and very long-lived. Speaking of Rebecca, speaking of how old, they can be up to 100 years old. And Yeah. So, and here's another example from my home state, California desert tortoise that live out near the Mojave and I believe it's the Sonoran, Mojave or Sonoran or Chihuahuan desert, at least the Mojave for sure. Anyway, you can get bit, Rebecca. Yeah, you can get bit by a turtle, and some of them have a pretty strong jaw. But I've never gotten bitten by one. They could probably bite your hand off. Now, here in this image, you could see how some turtles' shells have these little. Well, all turtle shells have these different parts that we'll talk about in a minute, but some have various colors on them and various ridges, like this one right here has these ridges. Do you want to say anything else about that? Oh, yeah. Well, I had read, Rebecca, you said the Guinness Book of World Record was a sea turtle having the longest lifespan of up to 150 years. Well, I had read about this turtle in the Seychelles that might be over 200 years, but it's hard to really prove because they outlive any of their caretakers. So anyway, that would be good to do a bit more research on that. And many turtles, especially those in the U.S., are threatened. Now, oh, yes, that's right. In terms of how many turtles there are in the world, there's about 325 species. But just since the 1500s, 9 have already gone extinct. And so there's a lot of things that threaten turtles. And here's a list of just some of the turtles and like this gopher tortoise here that are threatened. So there's lots of threats to turtles depending on where they live in the world. Of course, if they walk across a road, they could get run over, and many turtles do move throughout the year, especially when the female is going to go move and lay her eggs. She might be searching a long ways to have the perfect place to lay their eggs, so they might be going across roads, unfortunately. Now, of course, habitat loss is the main one. They're being lost through, development and such. And also, especially aquatic habitats are really being impacted. And aquatic habitats can have, pesticides and such that get in the water that are really bad for all of the aquatic animals. Now, many turtles also in some parts of the world are eaten as a delicacy. So they're captured and their meat is eaten, and also their eggs are eaten. So when turtles, like marine turtles, come ashore to breed, to lay their eggs on the beaches, those eggs are often dug up and eaten by people. Turtle soup is a very popular delicacy in some parts of the world. And the shells also have been collected. Tortoise shell and various turtle shells are very beautiful, as you'll see from some of these photos. So those have been collected and used for all kinds of things like jewelry and such. And then marine species, like we saw here, these marine species, they're often threatened by fishing. So certain kinds of fishing vessels, especially the ones that have very long lines on their on the fishing rods, they're called long line fishery, things that are fished, people that fish for things like tuna and swordfish, those kind of techniques often capture turtles, and they also get captured in fishing nets. And then turtles are also sold as pets. They're raised and sold as pets, which it's okay if they're raised as pets, but many of them are taken from the wild as well. And a lot of species of turtles don't make very good pets. I remember when I was a kid, I collected one that was on the side of the road. I was afraid it was going to get run over, and I brought it home. And I remember it disappeared. It crawled under the fence and disappeared. And I was so sad because I was like 8 years old. But anyway, turtles don't make really good pets mostly. And often they can transmit diseases like salmonella. So anyway, moving on to more of the third group, we talked about the marine species, then we talked about the tortoises, but the biggest group are the ones that are more kind of a balance between living on the land and living in fresh water, like we'll sort of talk about today, like these painted turtles or pond turtles. So, these turtles are more connected to the water. Of course, they're not like an amphibian, or a fish, but they are in the water. They don't breathe air like a fish. They breathe. They don't breathe air through their gills. They have lungs, so they breathe through the air. Anyway, what else was I going to say about this? Yeah, so that's the largest group. And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So they live, some species can live up to 50 years, talking about how things live. There are species all over the United States, particularly. And in terms of biological diversity, I mentioned that there are over 300 species of turtles in the whole world. But the U.S. ranks number one in the number of species and the number of endemic species. I think almost 60 species. Other places in the world that have a lot of species diversity of turtles are Southeast Asia and also northern India. But the U.S., especially the southeastern U.S., has a lot of diversity of species. And that's partly probably because there are so many lakes and rivers and creeks and ponds and wetlands and estuaries. If you remember when we were talking about newts and salamanders, remember how we were talking about the tiger salamander? And we mentioned how salamanders have their world diversity in southeastern United States too. Well, so do the turtles, and there's about 50 species, like I said. Where was I? Kind of gotten lost here. Just wanted to look at my notes. Yes. The U.S. ranks number one for endemics with, I think, almost 60 species. And here's one of them. This is related to the turtle we're going to be looking at today. This is the eastern painted turtle, and they have these white spots on their neck and head that differentiate them from the western one. So we've got pictures of both of those in our cheat sheet today. All right. So if you're new, then I really like to talk about the parts of the animal we're drawing, because that makes it so much easier to look at them out in the wild or even in a photograph like we're working on today, and to really know what to look for and know what's important. Okay. And there's a lot of places you can illustrate turtles and get a chance to sketch them. I know when I was a kid, I lived near a pond where we had western pond turtles, and I would go there after school and just sit and watch them, and they'd be sunning themselves on the rocks and on the little downed logs that were floating in the pond, and that was really cool. So you might live somewhere where you could see a wild turtle, or you might know someone does have a pet turtle. You can also go to pet stores and often see turtles, and they might even let you sketch the turtle in the pet store. There's often turtles at zoos and aquariums, like here at the Oregon Zoo in Portland. We have painted turtles like the ones we're going to be drawing today. So there's lots of places you can get a chance to sketch turtles, either in the wild or at museums or zoos or aquariums and all of that stuff. Okay. And so here are some of their parts. Now, if we started with the head, of course, they have an eye, they have a mouth. I already talked about how their snout kind of comes to a little point like a beak. They do have an ear, but there's not an external ear opening. It's called a tympanum, but they do feel vibrations. They have the claws on their feet, and they have 5 of them. Now, this is a male. You can see how long those claws are. Oh, sorry. Am I pointing? Sometimes I don't know if my pointer's working. Is my pointer working? Is it on the claws right here? Say yes. So males and females have different lengths of claws. And so you can see this is a male. They have really long claws, and they use those claws in courtship and to wave their front arms around to attract the female. So the female has a lot shorter claws, and she has a shorter tail as well. Oh, thank you for the yeses. Great. And then, they have different kind of color patterns on them, depending on the species. Like the one called the red-eared slider, which I believe this is one, has this little red on the ear. And then they have the carapace, which is the most unique thing about the turtle that no other critter has. So there's a top, it's the top shell, is the carapace, and the bottom shell is the plastron, which you can't see in this image. I'll show it to you later. Now, the carapace has a lot of different parts, and we'll look at that, I think, next. Just a second. So that's really important in drawing them, is the size and shape and number of those. But most turtles are pretty similar in having the same number of these parts. They're called scutes. So they're the hard kind of part that is separated by a little furrow between them with skin. And so they have these names. And, this isn't a class or a test, but just for you to remember that there are different ones to look for as we're drawing them. So there's this line of central ones, and those right under that is where the vertebral column and the ribs are attached. And so that those are a group of central ones, and you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 of those. And then right next to those are a pair of these costal ones. I think they're also called lateral ones or something. And so there's a pair of those. You can see they're here and they're here. And in this picture, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, but there can be different numbers of them. And then surrounding on the edges are what's called marginal scutes. And there's usually 12 of those. And then there's one in the front of the neck called a nuchal scute. And the one on top of the tail, those are called supracaudal, which if you know any of your Latin, supra means on top of. Like super is really cool or on top, right? And caudal means tail. Like you might remember when we were drawing fish, the tail of the fish is also called the caudal fin. Meg says, what scute is under the head? Well, they're above. So these are all the scutes that are above. And so the head is under the nuchal scute. Right. Yeah. Rebecca is talking about what they eat. Depending on the species, they eat a wide range of things. Okay. So anyway, the bottom bony part, not the carapace, but the bottom is the plastron. And so this is the painted turtle upside down. So this is his head over here. And we're just looking at the bottom. You can see how beautiful that is and maybe why it's called painted. And you can see the different parts there. And I think you can see these parts. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in this species. Now, I don't remember if there was always a certain number. Yeah, that's right. The plastron always has 12 pairs. 6 pairs or 12 altogether. And so those are protecting them. Obviously, you can see how unique it is with turtles to have this shell that is protecting them or sheltering them on top, and the one on the bottom. So they're pretty safe from a lot of predators, but some predators can attack them. Things like, raccoons, and if they were in the water, things like crocodiles or alligators. But most of these turtles can bring their head and their legs all in under their carapace and be a lot more safe, right? So you can see they're totally covered here. And you can also see these different scutes, as they're called. The parts of the carapace and the plastron are called scutes. So this is just a different view of how you can see those central ones here that are attached to the vertebrae, and then these lateral or costal ones, and then the ones along the margin, which is usually 12, called the marginal ones. Okay, and then here's just a close-up of the face. And can you see there's actually two turtles here? Can you see the second turtles? Courtney, do turtles have the strengthening pigment? Right, the melanin. So many turtles do have a lot of dark or black on them, and so that's definitely strengthening. So from this view, we can see, let's see, Kathleen. Yes, the bottom sections are called scutes too, and there's 6 pairs or 12 altogether. So anyway, from the head there, looking forward, we can see they have 2 nostrils and they've got the 2 eyes. And you can see this eye has pigment going across it. So it totally goes across the black pupil and then the colored iris, right? And I think we've seen other examples of that, like in our chameleon, and I think maybe in our fish and our snakes. And we've talked about why that is before, that often an animal will try to camouflage where its eye is. So we won't have a really obvious eye that's a different color from everything else, because a lot of predators really key in to the eye. They'll look for the eye, and that will tell them that that's the head of something and to attack it from that direction. So lots of animals are going to be trying to have what's called disruptive coloration, so that you don't really obviously see the eye as much. And so they have these stripes that will through the eye that will continue from the snout and down the head and neck. Aubrey, no, this turtle isn't eating the other turtle. I think in this picture, somebody just set these two together so you could see the size difference. It might be the baby turtle, but turtles, mamas don't take care of their babies. In fact, like one example is when the sea turtles, like the leatherback turtle and the green turtle, come to land and dig their nests and lay their eggs, they leave, and those eggs stay in the sand for quite a while as they're developing. And so when they hatch out, they've never even met their mother. Which is a good thing I wanted to remind myself to tell you guys. A really interesting thing is when the turtle female lays her eggs, those eggs could turn into male or female turtles, right? Like everything else in the world. Well, the temperature of that sand and of that soil where they're in influences whether there are more male or more female turtles hatched out. Now, maybe one of you guys remember, I forget which it is, if warmer temperatures encourage male or female turtles. But you can imagine how the idea of global climate change, with the climate getting warmer in some areas and cooler in other areas, that would really change the ratio, permanently change the ratio of male to female turtles, and that might be bad. Yeah. So, anyway, so here in this baby turtle, you see a lot of those color patterns, and you can really obviously see how that line is going through their eye and disrupting the eye. Like we said before, turtles are reptiles, so they are cold-blooded. So they need to get their warmth from the sun and their coolness from being in the shade. And so they will what's called thermoregulate, just like a snake. The snakes come out in the summer and they'll bask in the sun. And so do the reptiles. So do the turtles, because they're a reptile and they're cold-blooded. So this might be a familiar scene to you, where you're at a pond and you see a whole bunch of turtles on a log or even on each other. Yeah, Courtney says really cute. And so a group of turtles, or a herd of turtles, is actually called a bale. And you can see they're kind of baled up like a bale of hay all together on top of each other. And you see this one, you see its tail. And like I mentioned, male and females have different lengths of tails. This kind of looks like a male tail. They're longer and thicker. But since this is a baby, it hasn't quite developed yet. And in this picture, you can also see the number of toes and the number of claws. They don't always show, so you want to really look for that. So there are 5 claws and toes. And remember, the males have longer claws, especially on front, to be signaling to the females when they are courting them for mating. So yeah, these three groups of turtles we've been mentioning, the sea turtles and the land tortoises, and then more of the pond turtles like this, of course, they are reliant on fresh water all year and having it be very nutritious and very clean. They'll eat a variety of things depending on the species, like algae and aquatic plants, aquatic insects like mayflies and caddisflies and damselflies and dragonflies, because all of those have an aquatic stage. And some of them, like dragonflies, get to be about an inch or two long, and they would be a really good meal. Also, things like worms, freshwater mollusks like freshwater clams or mussels. What else? Oh, crustaceans, like different kinds of crawdads. So they eat a whole bunch of things depending on where they live and depending on the season and the species. Let's see. Here's another image of them basking in the sun, warming up because they are reptiles. This is the species that we're going to draw today, the Western painted turtles. Courtney, yeah, the babies get more melanin as they age, and their colors do change as they age. Here's another image. I just wanted to show this one partly because this is another endangered species called the Mary River turtle that lives in Australia. But mainly I wanted to show this picture because it is showing the number of toes really well. And so they do have the front and back toes partially webbed. And of course, the marine turtles are completely webbed into one big paddle, and they don't have these claws. But the aquatic turtles do, and you see they're webbed here. But you can see the individual hand bones, just like our hand. They've got the 5 fingers and the long claws at the end. But over on this, the turtle's right foot, you can only see 1, 2, 3, 4 toes. So the 5th one is kind of hidden. And let's see, you see the snout really well with the 2 nostrils, and then the small beak. Some of them have a bigger beak than others. Okay. And then those of you who are from the West Coast, like those people in California and Oregon and Washington, we have the Western pond turtle, and that might be one of the more familiar turtles to you. But that one also is becoming more rare because of habitat loss. And also in California, I read that the leatherback turtle is being considered for endangered species status. They've lost 90% of their individuals, their population, in just the last 40 years. So a lot of species of turtles are endangered. And in this picture, you can also see the color patterns of the eye and how there's a brown line through the entire eye that kind of breaks up or disrupts the color. You can also see the skin. So their skin obviously looks like a reptile because they are reptiles. So it sort of looks like a lizard or a snake, but not quite the same sort of patterns. Like if you remember when we were drawing the pit viper, it had a very specific pattern of those parallel lines of scales. And these guys are a little bit less organized, but you can still see these little scales. And it's probably the most common turtle in America. And that's one reason I included it, so that just in case you might see it. And it does come near me. Here, I live in Oregon over here. I live pretty much where the O is here in Oregon, right smack dab in the middle of Oregon in the Cascades. And so it's along the Willamette River and no, it's the Columbia River. Yeah, that's it. The Columbia River near Portland. And so it's all over, and there are a whole lot of different subspecies, which is really common for an animal that lives in so many different geographic areas because they get separated from each other through the thousands of years, and they start to look a little bit different, especially their color patterns. So I've given you two pictures, and those are pictures of different ones. So here, this is a little hatchling, a little baby. Isn't this one cute? Of the Western version. And here you do see they've got all these little color patterns. You can see very clearly the number of toes, and you can see the black and yellow. We talked about the strengthening pigment, the melanin. Yeah, isn't this cute? And you can see the line through his eye. That's called disruptive coloration. It's disrupting the circle of the eye so that a predator doesn't notice them as much, especially if they're just hunkered down really quiet in the mud, hiding from predators. Because you can imagine a little hatchling that's only, an inch long would be really tasty to a skunk or a fox or a raccoon or even a bird of prey or an alligator. And this one, so it comes in two varieties, the painted turtle. Lots of varieties, but I've shown you in our cheat sheet two of them. This Western one has red coloration on its plastron, this bottom part. So this is the Western painted turtle hatchling right here. And then the Eastern version, the Eastern subspecies of the painted turtle we're drawing today, it looks a little bit different, especially because it's got these big white spots. There you see several of them. And so there he is. There's the Eastern version. Now, what else was I going to say about these guys? I have my notes here. So anyways, all across the United States, really common in ponds, lakes, marshes. It can live up to 5 or 10 years, but in captivity, which we don't suggest, could live up to 20. And it does spend most of its time in the water, although to warm up, it's going to bask in the sun with its friends. And remember, we called that a bale of turtles. Now, depending on where it lives in the United States and what the weather is, it might sort of go into sort of like a hibernation and burying themselves in the mud. But if it's in warmer areas, it won't do that. And we talked about their food already. Like a lot of turtles, it's really like an omnivore. It'll eat worms and snails and slugs and crayfish, even leeches, freshwater mussels and clams. It'll eat tadpoles. It'll eat smaller fish and fish eggs and all that kind of thing. So anyway, and so this is the image we're going to use. Now, in general, we like to really observe our species before we start. Now, we have been talking about them now for almost an hour, so you've already seen a lot. But if you were just coming upon this turtle and you were going to look at it maybe through some binoculars, or if you're lucky enough to be really close to it, you would want to spend a few minutes observing not only its anatomy, but also its behavior, okay? So whether its neck is out or in, or whether it's quietly basking in the sun, or whether it's the male or the female, that kind of thing. So, So who's ready to sketch? Say me. So then I'll start out just kind of what I do air drawing, which is basically just spending some time looking at each part, the head, the carapace, the number of scutes I'll notice and their shape, those marginal scutes and the plastron there. and the tail, and then the legs. And again, noticing with the legs and the tail, any differences that might exist between the male and the female. Good, lots of me's. Okay. And so, like I said, since we have been observing this guy already a lot and his relatives, we're going to go ahead and start. And we're just drawing this large one on the right. For those of you that are new, I usually try to put a second picture in so that maybe you can practice on your own drawing. Okay. So now what I do is I just kind of indicate the size, the general size that the whole thing is going to be on my paper. And then I'm going to indicate just the basic parts very lightly. And so you're not going to be able to see this very well, but I want you just to kind of very lightly with a feather-like touch, kind of put in the foundations of where it's going to be on the paper. And you can see I'm just moving very quickly. I'm not putting any pressure on my pencil. I just kind of blocked in where he is on the paper. And then I'm going to start with that carapace. I'm going to draw that first, at least the kind of the width and the length of it before I add the other extremities. And so I'm doing a lot of measuring here. You notice, so measuring where the carapace starts at the end of the head there, and then the shape of the carapace. And you see I've gone just a little tiny bit darker, but not much yet. And I'm just moving quickly. I'm not speeding this up. This is how fast I draw. And you can do that too if you're not putting much pressure on the pencil. We'll do that later. So just looking a little bit more carefully now at the shape of the carapace or the shell. And I use my fingers sometimes to kind of indicate and keep track of where I am. Noticing those angles. And so here, I'm just going to point this out. So, you know, the top of the carapace isn't like a dome exactly. It is a little bit flattened. In these aquatic turtles, they have a flatter shell, especially those marine turtles that are always in the water and needing to be really super streamlined. But other pond turtles have a little bit higher shell or carapace, but it's not like the land tortoises. So we showed you the Galapagos tortoise and the gopher tortoise. Those land tortoises have really tall shells that are very protective. And of course, they don't have to be streamlined because they're never in the water. So anyway, we're noticing these angles. See, there's like one angle here, and then there's sort of a flat top. And then there's another angle here, right where the hip is in the turtle. And then the shell the carapace has another angle here and here and here. So kind of notice that. There's sort of like 6 angles. And I was just noticing right behind the neck how the shell kind of has a little angle there. Okay, so now I'm just lightening up. That was the first time I've erased. And so I was just erasing some of those beginning lines. And now I'm just going a little bit more particularly with that carapace. We'll work on that a little bit more. But if you're new here, I always try to get a little bit of the whole animal in first before I finish completely any one part. And that's also because I am practicing to be drawing in the field. And so if this basking turtle got tired or he got too hot, he would jump in the water and all you would have would be the carapace. So I try not to spend too much time on any one part in the beginning. Okay, so I sort of got the shape of the carapace, but not completely yet. So now we're going to add the head and the legs and the tail. And again, really light. And you can see how I'm just also doing these straight lines, looking at those angles. It's often easier to draw a straight line than it is to draw a curve. And so I will look at the straight lines that we have. So here we have kind of his forehead back here, the end of his neck here, and then sort of a flat forehead. And then it's a little angle where his snout is, especially a sharp angle where that beak is, right? Okay. And then you'll see there's an area here that's kind of his jaw. It's like a little bit of a half circle. We saw that a little bit when we were drawing horses, if you remember way back when we drew the Mustangs, and they have kind of this half moon shape that is their jaw. And then it goes down into their neck. Okay, so let's just look at those parts. And again, trying to just do these straight lines. Double checking the width and the length of the head and the neck. And you see how I fix the neck line. It kind of goes down farther than I had put it before. And then here I'm also making the head longer. I had given it too much of a neck on top. So that's why we go so lightly. And I am drawing actually darker than I normally would. I just draw darker so you see it. But I want you to try to be as light as you can. So I'm fixing that shape a little bit there. You see I kind of separated the drawing. And so again, we're not going to finish the head yet, because just in case he swims away. So now I'm adding the lower shell called the plastron, and I'm noticing where it is compared to the upper shell. So I'm looking at those angles, okay, right there. You see that angle there? And so that's what I'm doing with my pencil. I'm noticing that angle, see there? And where it starts at the neck. Sorry, Courtney, if you're behind, you'll need to watch the replay. I got to keep going. Feel free to watch the replay. So anyway, we did that plastron really lightly because the turtle's right legs are going to be in front of it. So we'll darken those later. So just very lightly indicating where that is, and we're going to erase part of it later. And then we see its tail. And remember, male and females have different types of tails. The male has a thicker, longer tail and longer forelimb, longer claws on the front leg. So there, now we're going to add the front leg. And you saw, again, I was doing alignment, that concept of alignment, looking at where that front leg started compared to the top of the shell. And just making some little, what we call tick marks, just to show me where it starts. Like there, I kind of modified where it was starting. And he's got an angle right there for his wrist. That's his wrist, not his elbow. His elbow would be back here hidden. This is his wrist, and the rest of this is his foot. So that's why it's pointing that way. So I'm just drawing the foot area very lightly, and then drawing the rest of the arm. Just again, getting widths and lengths really briefly, not adding too much detail yet, because remember, he might swim away. He might get tired of laying there. And we'll add the nails more later. I think this is a female because of the short nails and the shorter tail. But I'm not exactly sure. Don't know a whole lot about turtles. I was glad to do this project for you so I could learn a little bit more. So now that back leg, it's kind of looks wider and flatter and stronger because they really use those back legs for swimming, kind of paddling to swim. And I'm noticing where it is in relationship to the location of the tail. And you can think again of the negative shapes. So you see there's like this square here that's a negative shape. And so that's a pretty big area that the back leg is separated from the tail. And it's just big and flat and paddle-like. And there are 4 toes. Well, there's 2 toes kind of visible with their nails. And the other 2 that we see are actually hidden under the water. You can even see a reflection of the turtle on the water here. That might be fun to try to draw, but we're not doing that today. But you see that reflection is pretty cool. You see how it's kind of an upside down version of the turtle, and it's a lot blurrier and kind of lighter and fuzzier. So I would love it if somebody tried to draw that reflection. You can see it better in this video here than you can see it on the cheat sheet. But anyway, so let's continue on with that back right leg. And again, you've got 2 toes that are really visible, and then 2 that are kind of under the water. And remember, each of these digits are just like our hand. They got 5 fingers and toes and 5 nails. Okay, anyway, now I'm just really quickly indicating that log that he or she is sitting on. And so now that we do have all of the parts just basically on there, like the foundation of a house, now we're going to get some more details. So now I'm going to work on the head some more, go back to that. Noticing the width and the depth, and I think I'm going to fix the snout. It's a little bit too fat. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to fix that a little bit there. You can partially see kind of a 3/4 view of the head. So you kind of see a little bit of the left eye and the top of the forehead, just a little bit. And then that jawline we talked about, and the neck. And the neck goes all the way down kind of towards that right front foot. So I'm adding that left eye and then the right eye, and noticing that it's got that color stripe, that stripe through it. And then just giving a little bit of personality to the eye. You know, the eyes are the windows of the soul, so you want to spend more time on those. You can do that on your own more. We're just going to place where it is and just give it a little bit of lines around it to indicate that it's kind of a ball, a sphere that's sticking out from the head. And I fixed the snout right there because I decided it was a little bit too blunt. And you don't really see the opening of the mouth in this picture because you do a little bit see more of the top of his head. Looking at this again, I don't know. I think I've got his head a little bit too short. I think I ran out of paper there. Okay, so now going back to the carapace. And now you see how I'm going more slowly and I'm pushing down a little harder and noticing that angle there. Cleaning it up a bit. Then the front edge. And it's a little bit wavier than I'm indicating. I think I fixed that later, but right now I'm just showing the edges. Oh, goodbye, Lee. Thanks for joining us. I'm sorry I'm running a little bit late. A lot of times it does go an hour and a half. I should just tell people that because I end up talking too much about the turtles or whatever in the beginning. Okay, so now we're going to draw each of those scoots. If you remember, there's a particular number of them, and you could do it any way you want. You know, you could do these top ones first, and then these lateral costal ones, and then the marginal ones if you wanted first. So there's no right way, but you will notice kind of where they line up with the marginal ones. And anyway, we're going to go ahead. Enzo, goodbye. Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to do these marginal ones first, and I'm counting the 12 of them. There's usually 12 on each side. And I'm just going to see how wide they are in general. And I'm just going to make one line that indicates where they all are before I draw each of the 12. So I'm just going to draw it super lightly so it's a little bit, gives me a foundation to work on. And then I'm using my left finger to point to kind of keep track of where I am with each one. And I'm going to notice where it touches the turtle. Like the second one we're going to draw, we're going to notice it touches the turtle here on the neck. Well, a couple of them do. So this is a case where we do want to be pretty careful. So I'm just keeping track with my finger and noticing where it's ending up on the neck. And that next one ends up, near that front foot. And just going around, then kind of towards his chest and towards the belly. Just kind of going really slowly, looking at the shape of each of them. Some of them are a little bit more square. Some of them are a little bit more rectangular. Seeing that next one, it ends right there in the middle of the rear foot. And I'm just double checking my widths. I decided that I had that line a little bit too thick. It's going to make that scoot a little bit too tall. So again, just kind of ground truthing, as I call it, double checking, keeping track with my finger where I'm at. And, these could be a lot more accurate, but it's good enough for the field. So we're basically just trying to get the right number and the right shape, but it would be a lot more accurate if I spent a lot of time on it. But this isn't supposed to be a field guide illustration. This is supposed to be what you might do for a field sketch. So that's different. Okay, so now I'm looking at this next layer here, these lateral or costal scutes, and counting them. Some of them are bigger, I'm noticing. Some of them are smaller. And we're going to really notice where each one ends up compared to the marginal scutes that we first drew. So I'm going to draw that first one there, and seeing it has a little arc there. Right here, there's a little arch. Kind of like a little C shape. And then drawing and seeing where it comes down. And the second one. And just keeping track with my finger. Now, I haven't drawn very many turtles, so I'm kind of slow. But again, the more you study and understand turtle anatomy, the faster you'll be in the field, and the faster you can tell if something is really unique or not, or approximately how many of these scutes there should be. And that little triangular one, and noticing it's coming down to that scoot that's in front of the rear leg. I'm a little bit off right there, but oh well. It's just for demo purposes. And I notice it comes down, that last one comes down to the marginal scoot. And I just did fix that a bit because I noticed that scoot had a little, it looked like a triangle, almost like a roof of a house. So I just fixed that a bit. And so now I just have to do these parallel lines to finish up those top scutes that are attached to the vertebral column and the ribs underneath. And again, the pointing just helps me to keep track so I don't go too fast, and to make sure that I'm really drawing what I'm looking at and that I am looking. Because remember, one of my suggestions is to really frequently look back and forth, glancing at your subject, making sure you're drawing from observation and not memory or imagination. Because it's super easy once we start drawing to get kind of just having fun with looking at our drawing and our pencil and playing with that and not really looking back and forth at our subject. Okay, so now I'm just double checking I got the right number, and I'm pretty close. Now that I've got the legs placed, I'm just going to darken those up and show the individual toes and the individual nails on the toes. So this front leg, we mainly only see 3 of the 5 toes with their nails. The other ones are kind of hidden, like their thumbs would be hidden. And they're webbed, but we're not going to really show that right now. Just going to go to the back toe and show the 2 nails that are outside of the water. Sorry, I'm never sure how to get rid of that red line. Oh, wait. Is that good? Oh, sorry. Dang. There we go. I'll try not to touch the cursor again. So then we see the 2 toenails that are outside of the water and indicating the other ones that are kind of hidden in the water. Now I'm going to add that lower shell. Remember, that's called the plastron, and just double checking where it starts on the neck and coming down under the front leg and down along the belly and the rear end there. And then the tail, its length and its width. Remember, that is important. It has a lot to do with if it's a male or female. And I made it kind of wavy because it does have, a tail, like it's got vertebrae, and then it's kind of just segmented slightly. And then I just indicated the log a little bit and the water edge, and I'm just cleaning some things up a bit. Now, just going to strengthen the top of that shell because that is really smooth. Some species of turtles have a bunch of ridges there that are kind of 3-dimensional, but this one's really smooth on top. So I just indicated that with a really strong line. And now I'm outlining the bottom part of the carapace. And it's a little bit scalloped here towards the edge, or wavy, that is. And that's as far as we're going to go with that today. So you can imagine it could take me another few hours to demonstrate adding all of the color patterns and the 3-dimensional shading and all of that. But if you're new here, I mainly focus on having you learn a little bit about the anatomy so you know the parts to look at. And then the rest you can do on your own. So are there any questions? So you can email me any questions. You can also email me your images from today, especially if you took the extra time to finish the color patterns and the log and the water, or maybe even remember the reflection of the turtle in the water. I'd love to see all those. I can't get back to everybody, but I do try to at least look at all your drawings. Okay, great. So Dean says thanks. Jamie says thanks. Rebecca, goodbye. Okay, so take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.